Conversations with Kim McConnell is presented by Farm Credit Canada, advancing the business of agriculture.
I have with me today Ted Menzies, a farmer, a former cabinet minister, the former Minister of State for Finance for the country of Canada, to be newly appointed President and CEO of CropLife Canada. Mr. Menzies, welcome. Great to have you with us today.
Great to be here with you, Ken.
Great.
What drove you to get into politics?
The same old line that a lot of people would use. I wanted to make a difference.
How much attention does agriculture get at the cabinet table?
Our national caucus has 24 farmers. Many of our, even though they aren't farmers, many of our members of parliament represent, and cabinet ministers represent rural ridings.
Where does agriculture line up, and how important is agriculture in the checking account of the Bank of Canada?
It's still a big contributor. It's a large contributor, and I think will continue to grow in its stature.
So what can agriculture do to better prepare a cabinet minister as they go to the cabinet?
Both the trade minister and the agriculture minister need to hear the message of what is important, what is and what are the issues. That's very important, is make sure that when someone comes to my office and says, this is an important issue to me, can you move this forward? My first question to them is, who else have you spoken to? Have you spoken to the opposition MPs? Have you spoken to the rest of my colleagues? Do they understand this? Do my colleagues that represent downtown Toronto ridings, have you spoken to them?
Do you think we spend enough time in agriculture talking to people like that?
I think there's still a need to expand that dialogue even more.
How's the best way to do that?
Well, the verbal message is very good, but it needs to be a message from someone who has been involved in agriculture. Those are the people that can deliver the message. But the big challenge has always been is a disparate message from so many different organizations.
Are we too splintered?
Yes. Perhaps it's time we thought about an overarching organization that speaks for agriculture, that speaks for the benefits of research, that speaks for the benefits of the research and development field, the primary producers, the processors, the challenges that the processors deal with, and the food distributors.
Both domestic and international.
Domestic and international.
What is the biggest mistake that the agricultural industry makes when they're dealing with government?
The biggest mistake, I would say, and this is a bit of an outside observation, is thinking that more people understand agriculture than actually do.
Is the farmer or the person that's passionate and knowledgeable in agriculture, are they a better way of packaging and selling and presenting agriculture than, say, a lobbyist?
Interesting you asked that question. When I have a group come to my office in Ottawa and they have a lobbyist with them, I often ask the lobbyist to wait out in the entryway. I've made that a standard practice. The lobbyist plays a good role because they can get people to gather their thoughts, and they can help them put a message together. But the people that are in the industry need to know the message.
So we have a story to tell in agriculture, and we better start telling it.
We better get a good storyteller out there to tell that story. We have a very good story and it's an exciting time for agriculture.
Or if we wanted to change policy, do we start with the minister? Do we start with the department? Do we start with local MPs? Where do we start?
Start with the local MPs. And if you get a bad reception from the first one, then maybe you need to rethink the way you're delivering the message. Worst case scenario, maybe you have to think about the message. But start with them. Start with them and work your way through. The more members of Parliament that understand your issue or think that this is worth changing a policy for, they'll be your supporters. They will be your spokespersons as well. And that's the way to work your way up. And certainly you need to meet with the public servants, with the bureaucrats, if you will, so they can understand it, so they can look at the costing, look at the long-term implications of a policy change. And then finally to the minister.
What can farmers and the ag industry do with your staff?
The staff, in whether it's in a senator's office or an MP's office, are very, very critical, because they're the ones that deal with the issues front and center.
What should the agricultural industry stop doing?
Stop whining. And I think they have to a degree, but the old joke about farmers whining, it still has a bit of a ring of truth to it. It's far more effective to have a positive message and say, this is working well, that was a good decision, we can do better by doing this. One of the things that farmers still don't get, some segments do, is traceability. Being able to trace production back to where it came from.
And if we do that, have we got to step up on much of the rest of the world?
We need to do that, or we'll be a step behind.
Ted, if the agriculture and food industry could do one thing to better interact with governments, what would it be?
That's a difficult question, but it's always, to me, it comes back to communicating. The worst thing that any farmer, any organization can do is to work in a silo without communicating with government. Share with government where you're headed, what your thoughts are. Governments don't like surprises. Ministers don't like surprises. But even if you can tell them, we're thinking about this, don't surprise them.
What message would you have as a agricultural political leader to youth?
Get involved. I got involved years and years ago with the local constituency association, both provincially and federally. And that's where my interest started from, was helping the member of the Legislative Assembly or the member of Parliament. And I also had his or her ear, because I was sitting on their board.
Well, Mr. Menzies, this has been a treat. We've had the opportunity to spend time with a leader, with a farm leader who has gone to the cabinet table many times for agriculture and for Canada. We thank you very much for your time. We thank you for your leadership. We wish you the very best. I could think of no greater ambassador for agriculture than we have with our friend Ted Menzies. Congratulations and thank you.
Well, thank you, Kim. It's been a pleasure.